No matter how big your studio business is, if you market it well and price it correctly, there could be a buyer out there looking for exactly what you're selling. Wherever you find yourself in your business journey, it's really good to be aware of your options. Maybe you want to own your business for a few more years, or perhaps you're ready to make a change soon. Maybe you've never considered selling your business before, but know that this really is a very, very possible opportunity for you if you're educated on the process and exactly what goes into a successful sale. Today, I'm talking with my special guest, Ann Raber, about the ins and outs of selling a studio business.
Well, hi there, I'm Sarah Glanfield. I'm a business and marketing strategist just for boutique fitness studio owners like you. If you're ready to be inspired and make a bigger impact, you're in the right place. All you need are a few key strategies, the right mindset, and some support along the way. Join me as I share the real-life insights that will help you grow a sustainable and profitable studio. This is the Pilates Business Podcast.
Welcome back to the Pilates Business Podcast. I'm Sarah Ann. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm here with Ann Raber, who is an author, a Pilates instructor, and an experienced seller and buyer of Pilates studio businesses. Welcome, Ann, to the Pilates Business Podcast.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear all about what you are going to be sharing with us today, because for those of you who are listening, over the last 15 years, Ann has worked for dozens of boutique fitness businesses. And over that time, she saw many of the studio owners she worked with navigate the world of very small business ownership. And in 2016, she actually began helping one of those owners, her co-author of the book that she has recently written, to buy and sell Pilates studios in Newport Beach, California. And after completing a handful of very successful sales and purchases of small studios on their own, without paying for brokerage services, by the way, Ann and Murphy decided to share all that they had learned in the process that they had gone through and refined actually through selling boutique businesses. In the book that they have written called You Can Sell Your Business, a practical guide to selling your very small business. So I was excited to bring Ann on, because when we are building and growing our businesses, many studio owners think long term about where are we going with this? What's going to happen when it's the next step? How does that work? And for so many studio owners, you go into this, many times you start a studio from nothing. Sometimes you purchase a studio and build and grow. And then at some point you might want to perhaps sell it, or perhaps buy a second location, perhaps buy a second business. And there is so much that goes into a successful sale, right, Ann?
It's very true. And I think the word that we use for what you're describing is exit strategy.
That's right.
And not everyone thinks about that, because starting a business, whether it's a boutique fitness business or another type of business, a lot of the guidance that you find for that process doesn't include what's your exit strategy. And this was definitely something we learned a lot about in our process. And we think there are things that business owners can do, particularly in an industry such as Pilates, that will build in some support for themselves when it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And it should be time to move on at some point. We don't expect to run the same business or have the same job for the duration of our careers.
That's right. Absolutely. And there's even if you're not necessarily planning to sell your business or to buy a business, perhaps even within the next 6 months or a year, it's still worthwhile undertaking certain activities in your business to prepare for that potential down the road. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely true. We had somebody write a review for us on Amazon who said, oh no, it wasn't. Maybe it was just in conversation. Somebody was telling me, they said, they don't own a business and they were reading the book and they said, it really made me think about how to start a business. All the things that you run into when you sell, a lot of these, the scariest or most daunting or difficult parts of preparing your business for sale are things that you can head off when you begin by setting certain practices in place. And I was surprised to hear that from someone. We really wrote our book for people who own businesses, but she was not wrong. It definitely can apply to all those aspects of the process: buying, establishing, running, and selling. Wherever you are in the process, at some point, your business will change hands. You won't own it anymore. And the sooner you can organize and streamline some of these practices that potential buyers are going to need to have in place, the better.
Right. And there's a few different kind of components that go into setting up your business for a successful sale. I'd imagine you want to absolutely get your numbers and your books in order and in a presentable way. And as well as sort of thinking about what assets you have in your business and the value of those. But there's also other things that you recommend in your book, and documenting processes and operations within the business as well are also quite important.
Absolutely. I think when you're starting to consider a sale, wherever you are in your process of considering a sale, you want to come up with a way in words, in a presentable document, to explain how your business runs. And the most important thing about this, and where I think so many business owners get into trouble, is they're a little embarrassed about how their business runs. Like, their business runs in ways that are kind of not ideal always. We all have this. And I think when you are preparing for a sale, you need to be able to present your business as it is to potential buyers, so they know what it is and they can make a decision about whether they want to buy it or not. It's a lot like you get that dating advice sometimes, like, don't present yourself perfect because you're going to attract the wrong people. And once they realize who you really are, they're going to be upset and they're not going to want to be with you. It's exactly the same with this. Present your business as it is. If you have a very intuitive and somewhat unsuccessful way of hiring employees, for one thing, organize what that process is. Maybe you'll change it over the next period of time. Understand what your process is and document it so that you can share it with the next owner. We do an interview like this. We do a phone call like this. This is the employee handbook, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it goes for it goes for those financial statements too. Saran, it is shocking if you are looking to buy a business, what business owners will send to you thinking it's okay, thinking this is like an acceptable presentation of finances for a buyer. You really, and our book has a lot of this, but you really need to be honest and clear, and honest about what you don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. Explain it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've got some questions that I think always are the questions that most studio owners sort of thinking, perhaps sometimes voice them, sometimes raise them, but often worried about what the answer might be. So the kind of, but I know that you can shed some light. So in your book, you talk about very small business, right? And I think oftentimes if you're an independent studio owner and you have maybe one or two locations and you're looking to sell one or two of those locations, how big does a business need to be, or how small? Like, when you talk about small business, and what does that look like?
Our book and our work is for what we decided to call, after a lot of debate, a very small business. I wanted to call them tiny businesses, but Murphy flatly refused. But a very small business, we're defining as having maximum $2 million a year in gross profit, in gross earnings, $1 million in net, not a lot of employees, mostly part-time employees, if that, and that's like a high ceiling. We're talking about businesses that are owner involved generally. You might even be the owner and only employee of your business. You might have a couple of part-time employees. You might be a studio owner manager and you have a little team of instructors. Our business that we had in Newport Beach for many years was a studio manager and a desk person and about a rotating cast of 9 or 10 instructors. This is medium-sized, very small business. It can definitely be, it can be pretty minimal. It can be you and 2 reformers in an office space, and it's still a small business. And you have found, if you are that person, that a lot of the resources for small businesses, resources for small business owners, everything from software, payroll work, virtual assistants, bank accounts, and especially literature designed for mergers, acquisitions, sales, and purchases are not talking to you. They're talking to way bigger businesses because way bigger businesses have way more money. And so it's more worth it to offer services to them.
Right. Now, regardless of the size, so regardless of the size of the revenue stream, income, earnings, businesses can have a much, much lower level of earnings and still be sellable, right?
You can, yes. I mean, businesses are always sellable, even if they're not making any money. And in a lot of cases, even if they're losing money, because starting a business is always more expensive.
Yes,
particularly when we're talking about Pilates, equipment and full service studios. And this is something really specific to our industry, and I'm obsessed with it because it is so unique. It is different for a yoga studio. Maybe it's the same for a spin studio, I would imagine, but Pilates is my favorite because you've made this investment in essentially vehicles. For a Pilates instructor starting out or a would-be studio owner, investing in new equipment, investing in equipment that's consistent across brands from the secondhand market, it's a nightmare. You're always better off purchasing an existing business and working from there. Not to mention all of the other little things that go into starting a business. You might remember them from when you started a business, getting a website, just setting up an email address that works, choosing and signing up for a software program to manage clients, your client list, even if it's very small, even if you saw 20 clients this year and you didn't make any money, you barely covered your rent, or you didn't cover your rent, your partner helped you cover your rent. And this happens in our industry.
Yes.
You know this. It is still worth putting your time into selling that business and that brand because it will have value to someone else.
Absolutely. Yes.
In a lot of different cases. And I would say there are 2 people we're talking to in our book. One of them thinks that they can't sell their business because their business is not doing very well. Maybe they're embarrassed about that, or maybe they just feel like I failed. Who would want my failure? The other is people who think their business is worth millions. And it isn't. And there are less of those people, and they're not going to read our book anyway. But in any case, you do see both. There is the right marketing strategy and the right sale price will find you the right buyer. I would say I'm pretty optimistic. Maybe Murphy would disagree. I think any business can find its buyer with enough time, patience, good marketing, and the right price.
Yes.
And it will always be better for you than closing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, as a business owner, you have developed, like you said, you've invested a lot of time that probably you did not pay yourself for to build and grow the business and do all of those things in the beginning, building the website, training a team, hiring, right? We're not necessarily as a business owner paying yourself by the hour for all of those things. And you've built a brand that has value, and you've built a cash flow that has value, right? And so definitely, I completely agree, that going after, if you intend to leave your business, to sell it is the best outcome for sure.
Absolutely. If I could give an example, there was a studio. Our studio is in Newport Beach, a very crowded shopping center. Pilates is huge, classic Newport, Orange County reality show life. And near us was a very old school, small office sort of space with a Pilates studio that was open it was never open publicly. It was by appointment only. You know what I'm talking about? It was a single instructor who had her studio. She did private and semi-private lessons by appointment only. Very little marketing, but a lovely space anyway. And I always really wanted us to buy it because it was a good space for a Cadillac and a reformer and a Wunda chair. She had found the right space. She had put the equipment in it, and it was close enough to our busy classes, 12 reformers studio, to have this side location for private lessons and semi-privates. So we could run such things concurrently. Somebody in that owner's situation might think like, these behemoths, like they don't want anything to do with my business and I'm not going to do it anymore. So I'll just sell my equipment I'll sell my equipment through the Balanced Body website. And that's that. And I would so strongly encourage people in that type of situation to really consider the value that your business can offer to businesses that you don't think have anything to do with your style. We ended up purchasing not that one, unfortunately, she's still going, but we ended up purchasing a similar studio that was like that was very small, never open, no marketing, couple reformers. And we ran it as a sort of second location exclusively for privates and semi-privates. And we no longer had to crowd our big studio with that. It was a huge benefit for us. Yeah. So always keep in mind, in Pilates particularly, or cycling, or especially yoga, if you have that type of space that's really specific and awesome for that type of work, you might be a diamond for a business that you never imagined.
Yeah. And it's really all about being able to see the opportunity for someone else. And I'm assuming a little bit of that comes through when you are putting together your sales deck or your marketing pitch.
Deck.
You say sales deck.
We say sales deck. We use the word prospectus, but I don't like that as much. When I'm selling a business, when I'm helping sell a business, I'm talking about a sales deck. There's different words, but it's a packet. It's a PowerPoint.
Yes.
That is your pitch.
Yes. And what goes into that pitch? Tell us a little bit more about what
There's a lot of things. It's the biggest part of our book, the longest chapter, the longest part of our workbook, which is like attached to the back of our book, and you can use the format. It is layer by layer. Each page goes into more detail. Effectively, every potential buyer that you clear is going to look at the front. Some of them are just going to toss it and be like, oh, no. Some of them are going to turn to the first page. The first page is going to give you a pretty broad outline. This is our name. This is where we are. This is what we do. This is how much money we made last year. Interested? Turn the page. This is how many employees we have. This is what the owner does. This is how much the owner works in an average week. No details. This is how much our rent is. Still interested? Next page. This is our schedule. And you go into more and more detail. And at some point along the way, around page 3 comes, well, even on page 1, the opportunity. What's the opportunity here? And you phrase it, you explain it as you're offering someone a job. This is the opportunity to run a very tranquil, tucked back in a forest Pilates boutique with 2 reformers and a Cadillac and a loyal client list of about 24 people, full stop. And you go more and more into describing to this person who's looking, your reader of your prospectus, what the job is that you're offering them.
Yeah. So in there, you've got your numbers. You need to have your numbers.
You do. But they come,
carry on.
we have looked into buying businesses before. I've even just clicked on the links in business ads and been pretty surprised at what kind of information people put forward out there. Sort of just a detailed list of all their assets on the ad, this type of thing. You want to be very organized, and you want to give people the information that they need. The first time they're looking at your business sales deck, the first time they're receiving your pitch, they need to know about how much money you make and about how much money you spend and where that money is going. And you always want to include as well options. So something that comes up over and over in our book is the fact that you run your business in a certain way according to your personal preferences and resources, and those are not shared by everyone. You might use a car through your business that has like a big painting on the side of it that's an ad for your business, and that's something you purchase through the business. That's something that's very optional. The next owner might not want to. You might pay for professional cleaning services or a towel service for your clients. That is absolutely just something you like to do because you don't want to deal with it. That can be presented alongside your financial statements. This is what we make. This is what we spend. Ways you could spend less. Ways you could earn more. We could do more promotion in this way and this way. We don't. Or we used to always offer a free class at a health fair. We don't anymore. You could start doing that again. Different types of, you want to show for certain in gross terms how much money are we talking about? Where does it come from? Where does it go? But you also always want to present those opportunities. Like, where could it go? Where could you save? Because that's what the person is going to be thinking about. You know?
Exactly. And I think when you're in your business, it may or may not be obvious to you may believe it to be obvious, right? Because you are in it. So you see it and like, oh, they could do this, they could do that. This is something we haven't done. But if you're not putting it in your sales deck or in your proposal or your prospectus, then you cannot assume that they know anything other than the exact facts that you're giving them.
Exactly.
And so it supports your the sale of your business to be almost sharing all these opportunities in a very transparent way. And I think transparency here is also critical to building that trust, because this is to sell a studio there's a relationship there of trust that has to be established, I would say, well before the actual transaction takes place. And so the more transparent and more clear you can be, the more likely the conversation is to be successful.
Absolutely. You want to give in your business sales deck as much information as the potential buyer needs to know what questions they have next, to understand how your business works. It's not going to be everything. You'll include in your sales deck, we always at the end add really detailed financial statements that are like month-to-month financial statements for the last 3 years. And I will give that away. Like, that's not a secret. You want to always offer potential buyers the last 3 years on a rolling basis of what's going on in your business, the financial picture of your business. Wherever you are in your sales consideration, start keeping a really nice month-to-month chart that's showing that starting this week. Because then when you decide to sell, you've got it for the last 6 months, for the last 18 months. You have those that month-to-month column showing how the money is going. Your categories are organized, not too much, not too little. That's tricky. It takes, you need to, what we would call beta readers for that, to show some people you show and say, does this make sense? Do you understand how my business runs when you look at this? And they will tell you if it's a mess or if it's a little vague.
Yeah. I'm sure it's also helpful to have a couple of people take a look at it that perhaps are unfamiliar with your business, so that before it actually goes out to potential buyers, so that you can pick up on all of these things, right? For sure. Okay, so
it's so true. But in every sale we've ever done, after that first couple of potential buyers reach back out to me with questions, I know I'm like, that just needs to be in the sales deck, and I amend the sales deck to include if there's always a question people are asking.
Right.
Asterisk explanation.
Right. So the big question is, how do you come up with a valuation for a studio business? Where do you start?
What's the price?
Right.
How much is it even worth?
Tell us.
I'm netting $300 a week. I don't know. So the easiest thing to do is look at the other businesses for sale that are advertising themselves. But take those offers of those prices with a bit of a grain of salt. A lot of them are going to be a little high because a lot of those ads are being posted by brokers. And those brokers always are going to price it a little high because commission. That is a really good place to start. Try to understand, just looking at your market, or if your market is very small, if you're in a smaller city, look at a similar city or a couple of similar sized cities in your region. Try to get a feel for what places similar to yours are selling for, or at least asking for. From there, so that's you're going to get kind of a range of prices. And I would cut the top 15 or 20% of it just off because it's noise. The second thing to start doing is to look at your annual profits, your annual net, even if it's low, and consider what we call valuation by multiple. So you're going to take that number and you're going to multiply it by a number. And that number could be 2, or it could be 4. 4 is high. This is going to be what you're proposing with that is, this is the amount of money that you could make if you took over this business today and changed nothing for the next 2 years or 3 years. And you will explain that in your sales deck and in conversation with potential buyers. They want to know, how did you get to this sale price? And you'll say, because I netted $10,000 last year, and for an average of $10,000 a year for the last 3 years, let's say. And it seems to me that a multiple of 2.5 for my industry and my area makes sense. They might not agree, but you have explained how you got to this sale price of $25,000, whatever. And that's going to be the most important thing. I think if your multiple, that $25,000, if you're this small studio you want to price your business at $25,000 because you make $10,000 a year on average, and 2.5 is a healthy multiple for the Pilates industry, I guess, typically. You want to be able to explain that, how you got to that number, and negotiate that with your potential buyer. And hopefully that number that you get is in line with those examples that you found.
Yeah, I think that is so helpful for you to share that process. And the other thing that I will add to that is, oftentimes, you are educating yourself on the process of selling your business as you're going to sell it. Perhaps you do research ahead of time. Perhaps you start to sort of educate yourself earlier than sort of the minute you need to actually come to the point of sale. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes the buyer is also someone who perhaps may be new to business too. The buyer is not, has not bought a business before, has not sold a business before. And so there is often, you may be sort of working together. And again, it's about having no assumptions about what the other person, the buyer may know, or the other person knows, a potential buyer may know, because they may not understand the concept of multiples. They may not understand or know or be aware of how valuations come about, and all of that kind of logistics that goes into the buying and the selling of a business, of the transaction actually taking place. So I think there's a lot of patience and tolerance that goes into this as well, but transparency and honesty too with information and understanding. Really, it's a lot about understanding the buyer too, right?
Try not to just respond no to a low offer.
Right.
Leave it open, because the person, as you said, they might not know how you came to this. They also might just have a really different negotiation strategy. They might have bought a lot of businesses before, but not in this industry, and might come at you with this has happened to us. They might come at you with what feels like an aggressively low offer. And that can do two things. It can shake your confidence, like, oh no, like, am I asking too much? Or it can make you angry and respond too shortly.
Right.
So I think it's true. Really be open.
And I think that brings to another thing that we haven't touched on, that with the studio owners that I've worked with that have bought and sold businesses, there is a big emotional component to this too. And kind of coming into the process of a purchase or a sale with the right mindset is really, really important. And if you have built your business from nothing and dedicated years and years of your life to a business, it can be a challenge to then go to sell it if you're not fully prepared from a sort of a mindset and an emotional perspective. Has that been your experience?
That is what I am doing here, Saren. Because Murphy, my boss, now partner, had this exact problem of knowing her business was valuable, being very smart with money and able to value her business very accurately. But really, when it came to defending her price to strangers who had an interest in her making her price lower, it was not productive for her, and it was not pleasant. And I think this is someplace where team building can make a huge difference. I've worked in a number of sales with Murphy as what we call in our book, the lead manager. This is a pretty hard job, but if you're not the owner of the business, it's not that hard.
Right.
Because not that you don't care, you care so much, but it's not your baby. So if you know of yourself that talking to strangers about why your business is so valuable and they should pay this for it is just if that makes you feel nervous or a little influenced by fear or anger or any feeling that just throws you off of your game, consider who in your life and in your business work could be somebody to help you manage leads. This is something that brokers can. This is a reason a lot of people use brokers, because they don't want to talk to people.
Yes.
Because it's some people.
It's challenging. Yes.
Some people are not. It's not.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not always. You're not always talking to people with the same objectives as you or with the same background. And you do need somebody in your life, whether it's yourself or someone else, to field those early phone calls, to answer those questions from a place of transparency and confidence in the business, not defensiveness and fear and, oh my God, they're right, I'm a fraud, never mind.
Yes.
And that is something big. And I think where I think if you in your business have, or in your life have friends, employees, former employees, old bosses, anybody you've worked with who understands your business, likes your business, believes in it, and can talk to humans, you might consider floating to them the idea of managing those early interactions for you. It doesn't have to be all the way to an offer. It can just be take initial phone calls, figure out who's crazy, and just send me everybody who's not crazy. I'll deal with them from there as the owner. Or take it all the way to the offer. Call me when they've made an offer higher than this. however you want that to work and whatever type of compensation works well for you between you and that person, set that up, because that can take a huge load off of the stress for an owner. Just those interactions can be so hard, I mean, it's like dealing with clients, but I mean, it is dealing with clients.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Really good advice. Well, thank you, Anne, for coming on and sharing just a teeny bit of what you have shared in your book. And if you are listening to this and you're thinking, I would like to learn a little bit more about how I can sell my business, and tell us where folks can go and find the book, and a little bit more about how they can find you too.
Our book is available on Amazon. It's around on all the Amazon websites around the world. You can read it on Kindle. It's for free on Kindle Unlimited, or you can buy the paperback version. I think it's about $13. It's called You Can Sell Your Business, written by Murphy Curtis and myself, Ann Raber. We also have a website, yourverysmallbusiness.com, where we have links to our books, a little bit of different information. We're going to start posting in the future some offerings around helping people pull their sales decks together, resources for getting that help that you need to do this work yourself. We have an Instagram, which is at Your Very Small Business, which we take a lot of information that we have in our book and we make it pretty and put it on the Instagram. And yeah, we're really excited to share this process for people to read the book. It's a quick read, and we are told it's quite engaging as business sales books go. And yeah, Your Very Small Business on Amazon around the world.
Fantastic. I'm going to link to that in the show notes, so you guys can find all of that information right there. Thank you, Anne, so much for coming on and sharing all of this wealth of information. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
And thank you all for listening. I really hope this episode of the Pilates Business Podcast was helpful. If it was, please, please, please go and click on the follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening to this episode. And why not leave a review while you're there? Thanks so much. I'll speak to you soon.